Someone from Europe posted a message that stopped an entire American forum in its tracks. I had ice in my drink for the first time in my life, and now I have so many questions. Not a joke, not rage bait, a grown adult sincerely asking what you're supposed to do with the leftover cubes. And the answers he got open up something a lot bigger than ice. Here's the question, close to word for word. Do you wait for it to melt? Do you drink at the same pace the ice melts? What happens to what's left over? Eat it? Throw it out? Let it dissolve? And if a cube slides into your mouth mid-sip, is that supposed to happen? To an American, that string of questions sounds almost impossible to take seriously. Ice is just there, it's not a decision, but the person asking wasn't being dramatic. Across a lot of Europe, a cold drink just means the bottle came out of a fridge, not a glass stuffed with frozen water. The very first reply set the tone for the whole thread. I don't know, man. It's ice. Do whatever the hell you want with it. That's from a guy in Trenton, New Jersey, and it might be the single most American sentence ever typed on that forum. But do whatever you want isn't really an answer. It's a philosophy. And once people started explaining themselves, the actual logistics got surprisingly specific. Some people race the melt, drinking fast enough that the ice never waters anything down. Others like it a little diluted, especially with something sweet, because a fountain soda over the right kind of ice basically turns into 3 drinks in 1 cup, as it slowly melts. Strong and sweet at first, more refreshing halfway through, then you get to crunch what's left as a reward for finishing. And that crunching detail matters more than it sounds, because it turns out not all American ice is the same ice. There's a whole subculture built around what's usually called nugget or pellet ice, small, soft, chewable named for the fast food chain that made it famous. Soft enough to bite without risking a tooth. There is apparently a real market for home machines that exist purely to make that exact texture at home. Somebody in the thread learned the hard way why that distinction matters. Multiple people mentioned cracking actual teeth on standard ice cubes over the years. This is the part that gets me every time I reread this thread. An entire hierarchy of safe to chew versus go to the dentist ice, and nobody outside the country has ever had to think about it. Here's where the thread stopped being about drink etiquette and turned into an infrastructure gap nobody had noticed before. Multiple Americans, genuinely confused, started asking the opposite question back. Wait, do your freezers not have ice makers built in? The answer over and over was no, not standard, not common, sometimes not present at all. One American, only half joking, suggested we need a new Marshall Plan to bring ice to Europe. Someone else just called the whole continent poor savages, which is exactly the kind of line that only gets said on the internet. It's a small detail that says something bigger. An automatic ice dispenser in the door of a fridge is such a default assumption in an American kitchen that most people never registered as a feature, until someone from somewhere else says, flatly, I've never had one and neither has anyone I know. And just when the thread seemed to have covered everything, one line made the original poster say he was going to pass out. Buried in the replies, some of us put peanuts in our Coca-Cola. Not a joke, not a typo, a real documented Southern tradition. Buy a glass bottle of Coke, buy a small bag of salted peanuts, take a swig to make room, then pour the peanuts straight into the bottle. One commenter who works behind a convenience store counter said it's mostly older customers who still do it, and Coca-Cola's own website has apparently had to address the habit directly because enough people ask if it's real. The logic underneath it isn't actually that strange. Once someone spells it out, salt and sugar together is the flavor pairing the entire snack industry runs on. Salted caramel, chocolate pretzels, kettle corn. Peanuts in Coke is just an older, regional, unbranded version of the same idea. And that regional split matters, because plenty of Americans in the thread had never heard of it either. Someone from Michigan said he'd never once encountered it and wondered if the original poster was pranking him. Someone from Ohio called it some weird shit no one has heard of. Meanwhile, people from Alabama, North Carolina, and Georgia backed it up as completely real, just old-fashioned, mostly a habit that skips a generation or two, which is really the through line of this entire conversation. Even something as basic as what do you do with ice turns out to have a southern version, a fast food version, and a version that only survives in convenience stores off certain highways. There's also a genuinely funny cross-cultural mix-up buried in here. The original poster, knowing that ordering tea in the South usually gets you sweet iced tea by default, specifically asked for hot tea to avoid confusion while visiting Texas. A few minutes later, the server came back with a plastic cup of iced tea and asked him, completely straight-faced, "How hot do you want it?" Which sounds like a line written for a sitcom, except it happened in a real restaurant to a real confused traveler trying very hard to get a warm cup of tea in Texas. He says he still tells that story back home, and it always lands. Underneath all the peanuts and the pellet ice, there's a genuinely simple reason Americans default to ice at all, and it comes down to something most people never stop to question: what the drink is actually for. A lot of American drinking habits assume you'll be sipping something over a long stretch, a road trip, a work shift, an entire afternoon on a porch, and ice is what keeps a drink cold for the whole activity, not just the first 5 minutes out of the fridge. In a lot of Europe, the assumption is closer to drink it while it's cold, which quietly removes most of the need for ice in the first place. It connects to something bigger than beverages, too. Home ice makers, oversized refrigerators, central air, they're all symptoms of the same underlying pattern. Cheaper electricity and a domestic appliance industry built around comfort at scale. Ice was never really the story. Ice is just the most visible piece of it, and that's honestly what makes this thread worth revisiting. Not the ice itself, but what it accidentally revealed. One guy asked a sincere, slightly panicked question about melting ice cubes, and by the end of it, he'd learned about a regional peanut tradition, fast food ice culture, why nobody back home has an automatic ice dispenser, and exactly how to accidentally order the wrong temperature of tea in Texas. Not bad, for a post that opened with, "I'm confused, help?" And maybe that's the most American answer of all, not one single rule about ice. But the fact that there isn't one. Melt it, crunch it, dump it, drown your Coke in peanuts if that's your family's thing. Nobody's gonna stop you. It's your ice. If a question this small can crack open a Southern peanut tradition and a Texan tea prank, wait until you see what happens when the same country tries to explain why total strangers won't stop talking to you on a park bench. That's coming up next on this channel. Tell me in the comments, does your country put ice in drinks? And if not, what do you even do on a hot day?